Canadian Association of Gift Planners. Excited to have you all today. As I've mentioned, for now at the start of the session, please video and mics off. However, let's light that chat up. I really appreciate your comments, your thoughts. We've got a lot of advanced peers who are joining us today from across the country. So please, at any time, I'm going to be sharing a lot of new school thoughts today, a lot of information that's new, and a change in strategy for a lot of us in gift planning. So I hope you'll join us, but know as well that my colleague Aaron has sent you an email with a Dropbox that has a copy of the presentation in it, as well our survey and information on professional development credits with our colleagues from CFRE and the MFAP. Again, thanks everybody for engaging in the chat. Let's start up. Here we go. Awesome. So today we're going to be talking about gift planning for small shops. And again, you're here with us, many new people joining us today. Again, this was for small organizations. It's why we do this as part of our mission every couple of years to make sure we engage the whole country as much as we can. And for many of you, not members of CAGP or even know what the organization's about, you're going to get this deck today and a copy of all the resources. I got 5 pages of links and things for you. And one of them is the history of our organization. The Canadian Association of Gift Planners was created to be the bridge between fundraising, finance, and philanthropy, to bring in all the players, especially professional advisors, that make great philanthropy happen. One of the great resources that it's been developed over time. And again, today, you're not hearing just from Paul Nazareth. And yes, I've got 21 years in the sector and been in planned giving with charities, with a bank, with Canada Helps, and taught for us as faculty for many years. But I'm curating the wisdom of dozens of our experts, dozens of our faculty, over 150 of our chapter executive volunteers across the country who have created over time this competency list you see before you here today to help you to figure out what you want to develop to do this kind of fundraising. Now, what are we really here to talk about? It's about the fact that every one of your donors and every Canadian has a legacy that they care about. But we also have to talk about what is Canada. I'm coming to you today from the lands of the Haudenosaunee people and the Mississaugas of the New Credit. But you know, we had an extraordinary conference recently where we talked about the fact that we know who we are. I am a South Asian settler. And as we start to engage our colleagues in the Indigenous community, they say, great, Paul, we know you know the part of the, and I don't know. But the fact is, we do know that the answer, I don't know, is no longer acceptable. And please know, and we hope you'll join us in our reconciliation journey as CAGP in the charitable sector to figure out what's next and do something about it. Why are you here today? And who are you? Let me share with you who we hope you are and who we want you to know this is for. We said small shops. Well, for those of you who know, and the Canada Helps Giving Report just came out, 2021, reminded us that most charities in Canada are small. That most of them have revenues of under $500,000. And so if you are a small organization, you're going to hear from us practical solutions today from us. Many of you for mid-size and bigger shops, you're going to learn a lot on trends and data, but this is not for you. This is for people for whom when a staff meeting is called, they got to pull out a 3-way mirror. This is for small organizations to talk about what you can do right now about these kind of gifts in the country. And we're also going to talk about what you don't have to do, what you need to stop doing, what you need to put down. I'm going to share a lot of books today because, as you know, myself and our community are avid readers, but I'm not going to share this one because it's not a gift planning book. But anybody who knows me knows this book, Adam Grant's Think Again, which is invisible and rendering me invisible. There we go. Is a book that's tearing up my life right now because it's talking about how we can actually admit where we need to rethink long-held beliefs. And we're going to challenge some of those long-held beliefs here today. So what are we going to talk about in the first half of this about what you got to start doing? Number 1, I have been guilty of giving everybody permission to leave gift planning at the side of their desk in the past. We can't use that excuse anymore. Here we are hustling for every dollar when we've got a pile of rocks on the side of our desk and every one of them has precious jewels or metal in them, we just don't want to take the time to polish them and mine them and bust them open. There is cash money sitting on your desk and you are leaving it there. It's time to get it off the side of our desk. We're going to talk about how to diversify revenue, especially as we come out of the pandemic, to not go back to business as usual, to bring in more money and do more for those important missions that you represent. We're also going to talk about how we have let ourselves be passive. And Canadians are sommeliers of passive aggression, seeing the boss on emails. We got to get engaged. And frankly, you will spend less time and you will raise more money if you're engaged, and we'll talk about how. We're also going to talk about how stewardship has been an underused secret for bringing in more dollars, not just keeping the gifts that you already have. And lastly, a stalwart CAGP message that advisors amplify the asks that you do. However, we've been engaging them for the last decade or so wrong and told us so, and I'm going to share with you how. So the classic tension in the world of gift planning is between the head and the heart. For our donors, very many times they think this is an exercise of the head because math is involved, the law and lawyers and accountants. And yet we are constantly reminded by the great legacy writers, the experts, that our communication is the heart and our programs are the head. And that's what I'm going to focus on today, how you can communicate your mission, but how you can make sure that your administration and your capacity is still something that's there. You know, if you look on Mesozoic caves of the era of cave people, you will see this horrible pyramid from the world of fundraising on the side of it. And we've been talking about this forever, but the problem is we got it mixed up, because what the traditional pyramid is volume, cost, and time of work. And that's where special events, you bet, are the biggest. They cost the most, they're the most time to invest in, and they're the largest volume of what most small charities do. And yet when it comes to dollar size, planned gifts are at the top. Planned gifts are above cash because planned gifts, decade running, we've got this from colleagues at Good Works and PG Growth and colleagues, that it is 1,000 times what your donor will give you annually. And that's because it's about loyalty. It's about love. It's about someone who made you part of their groceries because they were monthly donors, not just someone wealthy who was convinced to give to you. Our colleague Fraser Green with Good Works wrote a book almost 20 years ago, Iceberg Philanthropy, about the fact that what we can see of most donors is just that little bit above the surface. And just 2 years ago at our last conference, he released this update, You Can't Take It With You, that I was proud to write the foreword on, because the fact is the iceberg has melted. And the demographics of planned gifts are closer to the surface than they've ever been, and you can no longer ignore them. Let me tell you a convenient lie. The wealth transfer is coming. Trillions of dollars will fall from the sky. I worked in a trust company, and we know that as much as that money is changing hands, that big tsunami of money never showed up. It is a slow rise as opposed to something dramatic, and that's also why we've let ourselves conveniently ignore planned giving for a long time. When we teach this, and again, today we are going to be talking about the very practical low capacity strategies for small organizations with 3, 2, 1 or no staff. Again, bigger organizations, we teach a very different strategy as part of our courses and our curriculum. But we've got to remember, again, the top of this is the heart. It is the language of the heart. When I worked with advisors in a bank, they would always ask me for the math, send me the calculations. But that's not what closed the deals. Right now, I'm doing about 1 or 2 different board presentations a week for CGP as we teach our curriculum. And board members always say, shouldn't we have more illustrations? But all that does is confuse donors. We need to talk about why. So in this process here, the top end is the why. And again, if you're looking for more resources in that space, we've got a 25-year textbook, Planned Giving for Canadians, that we update every year after the federal budget. And on the bottom side is the administration of what is mostly for you as a small charity, bequests. At best, Securities. You don't got to worry about the rest. Yes, I said it, and I'm going to say it again. Stop trying to do charitable remainder trusts and put gold coins in SpaceX rockets going to the moon. Securities it today, bequests tomorrow. That's what you need to focus on. I'm going to give you a bunch of podcasts and webinars that are free that were had at the beginning of the pandemic as we started to unpack what was going on. At the start of the pandemic, all we heard about was people running on toilet paper. Well, they were running on wills too. One of our colleagues at one of the online platforms was sharing with us that in 20 years of will planning, they did more wills in March, April 2020 than they had done in the past decade. And as much as our willpower pan-Canadian data shows us that 5% of Canadians are leaving a gift in a will, those wills that they had that were reactive, of people fearing, yes, death, and controlling what they could, had a very low number of bequests in it. But the phase that we are in now, as we come out of the pandemic, is going to be a reflective phase. My colleague, the great Lori Fox, head of Willpower, and I have just done a dozen estate planning council talks across Canada, and we are hearing from the lawyers, yes, the reflective will phase has begun. And as people reflect on their values and what they believed in, the fact is we know that it is time people will be reflecting on their values, and we need to be ready for what is going to go in those wills. Now, again, you know what we teach here at CAGP is the full spectrum of gift vehicles in our courses and our curriculum. Stocks and securities, foundations, private and public, in wills and insurance. But are we ready for what's next? Again, a whole bunch of people are lamenting the growth of online and all these different will functions. Let me share with you. Most of these folks, all of these folks are members of the CGP and sharing with us that as we make will planning more accessible, the gifts and wills are happening too. And we're going to have our colleague Sharon Hartung, who represents the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners globally in technology, who just wrote her second book on technology and gifts in Canada, is going to be sharing some more with us. But are we looking to the future? Our Canadian fundraising colleagues, Jason and Ann, wrote this book on cryptocurrency. Those are gifts of assets. If you come along with us at CAGP, you'll learn from this too. Again, you got to get it off the side of your desk. Now, if your desk looks this clean, I despise you. But the fact is that for a lot of folks, I remember one of my offices looked like a hamster cage. So much coming at us. And that was when I was at my smallest charity. But the fact is that we are leaving money on the table. And one of the biggest reasons we're doing so is many small organizations are trying to do it all. Now, again, I know that you as the fundraiser or frankly, small charity ED are trying to do it all. And your boss keeps coming back to you when they see inserts and articles in the Globe and the Post and the local papers that the charities are doing it all. We've got to get the menu. We've got to life insurance on our website. No, you need permission, and let me share with you our faculty, our leadership that is both advisors and 20+ year professionals are saying as a small organization, cash is king, we know that. The asset you need to focus on is gifts of securities. And if you can't handle that capacity, your local community foundation, Canada Helps, and other public foundations can help you with that. And bequests. Bequests are 90% of all planned gifts, whether we like it or not. That is a regret of ours at CAGP. We would like to see a wider spectrum of gifts and vehicles, but today it's securities and bequests. Give yourself that permission. Get it off the side of the desk and make it a page in your book, not the sole focus, because we know you can't do that. Integration is key. That's why we're talking less about blended gifts than ever before and more about, less about gift plans and more about blended gifts. Now, what can you do? When I talked about going from passive, every charity wants to hold some sort of plan giving seminar or wants to do a plan giving mailing. This right here is a Cadillac mailing created by our colleagues at the Agents of Good, one of the speakers in our community. But what you need to take from this is those little check boxes on the direct mail. I would like more information on leaving the organization in my will. I would like more information on making this gift using publicly traded securities. If you are a small organization with few or no staff, you need to do that, and then you need to deal with the organic leads that are coming in. When we listen to our colleagues across the country, our colleague David Love, 40 years in fundraising for green charities, but his book goes incredibly deep into small charity strategy of gift planning, and we are grateful to him for that. And we've got colleagues from across the country who specialize in small charity strategy, like Cindy Wagman, who hosts the nonprofit podcast, the #1 podcast in Canada with Charity Village, with our colleague Emma Luzzi, who focuses on small charity strategy and is shared. And I've got the blog post for you that making planned gifts on the side of your desks, leaving it there, orphaning it there, is how small charities are leaving their biggest gifts on the table. Our writers, colleagues like Amy Lindenberger, who actually leads our Vancouver chapter, who helped us write our last data report, and Leah Eustace, a lot of these people are our evangelists of the heart when it comes to gift planning, writing, and strategy. And they are the ones who say, if you are pushing, if you are doing plan giving, big mailings and big exercises, and then can't follow up on the leads, can't talk to the donors, you're doing more harm than good. Give yourself permission to work at your level of capacity. Create the organic leads by check boxes on everything going out the door. They will self-identify by coming in the door, and you will not feel weird about talking to people about death because they called you. Remember this strategy, and I will tell you, one of the weirdest parts of my life, I was born and raised in Toronto. It was actually delivered by the Carolyn Bennett, Minister of Indigenous Affairs, when she was a maternity doctor. But I've been blessed in my work with CAGP, and especially Canada Helps, to cross the country. And I'm tired of people telling me about their small town when it's actually a big community. And the pandemic has only shown us more deeply, as I listen to colleagues at United Ways, at community foundations, that we need to double down on local. And that all these celebrity fundraisers and gurus have the answers. When you've got local experts in your province, in your region, like these colleagues and many more, and we hope through our 20 chapters across the country to be raising their voices more, because they know your climate, your context, they know your candidate and your donors. We got to stop writing them off. When I talked about stewardship as a secret, and this comes from now a number of years of research from our colleague Penelope Burke with Cygnus Research. She had this incredible session she did at AFP on Icon with 500 plus people in sharing the data of her research, which we would love to do in Canada, but we can't get her the volume of donors she needs to do it. But she has now unequivocal data to show that stewardship isn't just the key to keeping your gifts. It is in fact the key to growing your gifts, growing your donors' gifts in life and their planned gifts. Because here's the deal. You don't have the capacity, either as a small charity, and for many of us, even as big charities, you don't have the capacity to do it all at once, to bring in the bequests, but then say, man, there should be life insurance, but also there should be an in-life and an endowed component. Why? We have a lifetime with these donors. So now Penelope has shown us in other studies from our colleagues at Blakely Journey, as they unpack the donor journey, to say you confirm the bequest, you steward the donor, you engage them and their advisor to evolve it where it needs to go, both in designation and in dollar amount. And guess what? The greatest fear of boards is always that focusing on requests will lower our annual funds, when in fact, we have the data to show that a donor's annual giving goes up. Exciting stuff. Thank you for everybody sharing in the chat. Hey there, David, glad you're with us. We'll answer this very specific question, and when we can, directly about the specific donor. Now, the other part of this, as we shared, is advisors. And the fact is that advisors are the other half of this equation that we hadn't engaged for a long time. It is the reason for our being at CAGP. Educate charities, educate the public, but to engage the advisors who make these gifts happen. And of course, when we share advisors amplify our asks, these engaged and educated advisors. This morning, I was talking to an insurance professional who was reading some of our new material and was over the moon at how they were able to help a donor evolve their gift. And again, I said, that's the challenge sometimes with the charitable sector, is that the gift will evolve and maybe a charity might not benefit when they did in the beginning. They said, the crazy part is the donors saw the potential, saw the multiplied dollar amount used in life insurance, and another gift to benefit more charities in life and as part of their estate plan. Some great comments here about the stewardship piece. Thank you for those direct messaging me too. This is a great point because we talk about this with groups that are able to stay with a donor through a lifetime, and organically so groups like community foundations that can be cause neutral, Because the fact is, a 20-year-old donor, a 30, 40, 50, 60, 100-year-old donor, of which there's over 20,000 in Canada in 2021, thank you, StatsCan. The fact is their giving priorities will not be the same. We want to make sure to support you in life. And again, gift planning is not about death. It is not about just bequests. We want more complex and larger gifts in life because Canada has the single greatest charitable tax system in the world. When you give in Canada of over $200, you're supposed to get back about half using your tax credit. But 85% of Canadians give, only 20% in change use the receipt. We're trying to teach them all this gobbledygook using scientific calculators. They don't know the basics. And through engagement and stewardship, they will grow their giving in life. They will evolve their giving. And an exciting trend that we're seeing is that as major gifts are designated, often come in tied to campaigns, especially for those of you with small charities, their bequests will support your endowment. Their bequests will be undesignated because you have spent a lifetime building trust. Stephen Covey, one of the great writers around trust, the son of Stephen R. Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, has an entire book called The Speed of Trust. And it is distilled down to the fact that trust is built when you do what you say. And through stewardship, you will have a lifetime of engaging that donor, accepting their money, saying thank you, a big deal, but also showing them you can do what you say. All right, Allison, ooh, we got an essay here in the chat. This is exciting. We put an e-survey to our database. Questions, great. A few donors commented that it isn't our business to know this. Or if they've left the charity, yes, we don't know, guide them, etc. Yes, indeed. How do you learn your plan givers if they don't want to be asked? Wonderful question, Allison. And I'm going to address that in a little bit, but let's just talk about it right now. A great post by our colleague Malcolm Burrows at Scotia Trust wrote recently to say, look, it is still above 8 to 9 out of 10 donors who will not tell you that you're in their will. And you got it. Most people say that's personal. But when they aren't telling us the whole story. For many people, and in my work as an advisor and many of our colleagues who really interview donors when they're creating legacy giving material, know that these donors are simply saying, I don't want to make a commitment to you and my life priorities change. Hey, what is your parent scared of? Every Canadian is scared of outliving their money for health concerns. So they don't want to make a commitment that they can't keep. That's one. Again, many Canadians have fundraiser phobia. And whose fault is that? That's a lot of organizations that are aggressive about fundraising. Heck, it's not all our fault. All the grocery stores bothering people at cash registers and all of that, there is fundraising phobia. And so we need to help our donors get over this. And how will we do it? You started. You did the gift planning survey, which is one of the most advanced strategies for a small charity that's prescribed by many of our great leaders like PG Growth, like Blakely. But you confirm the bequest. You figure out how to keep in touch with the donor, either through their lawyer anonymously, or the fact is most of them are your supporters. Nobody casually says, I want to make you one of my kids, which is what really someone does when they put you in a will. No one casually says that. So they're keeping in touch, they're listening. And now you have between now and the time they die to convince them you are worthy. That is what the power of stewardship will do. Thank you question as well from a number of people about resources, about helping donors. We're absolutely going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about it right now. Again, resources to help our donors to understand how they can engage advisors to properly do financial and estate plans. What resources can we share? And again, I want to say that as charities, I'm going to share a ton of resources with you, blogs, podcasts, books. But guess what? Once again, we're carrying too much of the burden. Hey, if it's a will, that's a lawyer's job. If it's insurance, licensed to sell it, that's a life insurance advisor's licensed a job. And so we need to bring these advisors in to our system, our ecosystem, our strategy. And as small charities, great news. You don't know about it. We're on our whole network, CAGP, community foundations, a lot of organizations who are with us. These are the bodies that license, accredit, and are the professional development institutions for the advisors who work on plan gifts. And we are working with them to co-create education, to educate them, to make sure they know their responsibility. Again, a colleague of ours in BC was sharing a radio show where an advisor said, I'm neutral. I would never share a charity to tell my clients to give to, but I'm very comfortable in telling them not to give to X organization because they're too big, Y organization I've never researched, and I think about overhead because my mom forwarded me an email. We've got to bring the good ones. We've got to educate the ones that are interested, and we got to mark the ones that are charity unfriendly. Yeah, I said it. Who is charity friendly? Look, we've got a lot of new colleagues in this space. For many of you as smaller organizations, you may not have heard of this now almost 2-decade trend in Canada and the United States called donor advised funds, which have been blown way out of proportion because all they are is a fund in a public foundation. They were created by community foundations, been lifted up by many advanced foundations, just a few of those you see here. We're excited to share that as CAGP, you're getting greater access to the Canadian data in the Donor Advised Fund report by Strategic Insight to show the real data of how they're granting, how they're working with clients and donors. And the great news is they're really bringing these together. They're bringing money together in a public foundation that must be granted and granted to charities like you. Now we know though, 90+% of donations in Canada go to 2% of organizations. So yeah, we want to start hustling to engage these advisors. This is big business. If you haven't seen Canada's Women in Wealth report from a number of years ago, but one of the most groundbreaking, first to market to talk about this, we had an incredible conversation, one that many of our own charitable colleagues really found quite profound. Our colleagues at Asante, who talked about women, wealth, money, and meaning. And several advisors shared with them what are the conversations they have with clients around charitable giving. And it was not about fundraising. It was really about meaning to them in a way that we don't get to have as fundraisers. Our colleagues at RBC are doubling down using data from StatsCan worked on by the Economist Business Unit to start talking about legacy as part of a financial plan. This has been our work for all of our 27 years at CAGP to help guide advisors, to do research and reports like the Philanthropic Conversation, to also go beyond. You know, we did some research and we asked advisors across Canada, are you talking to your clients about charitable giving? And they said, yes. And then we did an Ipsos Reid study across the country, talked to Canadians and said, are your advisors asking you about philanthropy really deeply, a conversation? And they said, no. And so we started that journey now 5 years ago. And our colleagues at philanthropic foundations, private foundations, public foundations were with us to create this report to show how advisors can integrate this into their business. But I got to tell you, your boss, your board is going to tell you you have to hold an advisor breakfast in the next 18 months. They're wrong. As an individual charity and as an organization of small capacity, do you need to be doing this? No. This is the responsibility of hub organizations like community foundations, like United Ways, organizations like nonprofit networks who host these kind of things, to be participating in boards of trade, chambers of commerce, and yes, to hold charitable events for advisors. I'm proud to say we've been doing that for the past few years. It's the reason that I left that wonderful role at Canada Helps to be full-time. Shout out to my colleagues at in Abbotsford, in Stratford, in Grand Prairie. We're going to be doing events to engage hundreds of advisors in the next year. And we're going to be engaging hundreds more as CAGP. When you hear we're coming to your town, please let the advisors in your network, on your board know, and we're going to be engaging you to let them know how we're priming them to support you. If you want an example of this, our colleague Ryan Fraser wrote this book that is a series of case studies of not just gift planning, but how the gift came together. And as a small organization, heck, for your board as well, when they have a lot of mistaken ideas, look, common sense is not common. The challenge for a lot of boards is they spend the minimal amount of time thinking about fundraising. They show up to your meeting and say, you know what you should do? Chocolate almonds in an ice bucket on a treadmill. No, that's not strategy. And that's not gift planning. And that's not the way that we want to represent what the donor wants to do and what our mission is. And so Ryan has unpacked several helpful strategies there. Now, that being said, we'll co-launch with our colleagues at the Knowledge Bureau Inspire Philanthropy a designation in Canadian charitable giving, Master Financial Advisor in Philanthropy. We now have dozens of these graduates across the country. There's probably one near you. We have a public list on our website, and we're going to be surfacing these advisors. You can look it up right now on LinkedIn. Who is my local MFAP? And you're going to know. Frankly, they put skin in the game. They put money on the table to take this designation. They are charity friendly and they are trained. Excited. Hey, we got several with us today. Thank you for sharing in the chat who you are. And we would love to learn more about why you do this. You're the advisors that we started to profile in Doing Good for Business. And through community foundations and other colleagues across the country, we're going to be profiling more because we need Canadians to know if you want to solve problems, and we got a lot. If you want to do good, you need a partner to do that. It used to be your financial advisor who helped you buy a boat, a yacht, get your name on a building. And now advisors are going to be our partners in helping to do good. Now, I'm not going to talk about charitable life insurance. That's not for small charities. That's part of our courses. But we have just spent 18 months with insurance companies, the KLU, the actual creditor of life licensed advisors, and several wonderful advisors in our community who have gotten together to put together this compliance document to help advisors create insurance and charities accept them. And this is the kind of stuff that we're creating and is in our courses if you want to go deeper. But what did I say? Don't put that on yourself. You need to focus on securities and cash and bequests on the back end if you are a small shop. So let's talk about what you got to stop doing. No one does this. Every boss is always, what are you going to do this year? Not what are you going to stop doing this year? Well, guess what? We're going to talk about that. Because for many small organizations, and we're very grateful to a lot of those small charity specialists, and we have a lot of fun fighting. David Kravenchuk and I in Western Canada and our colleagues at the Small Nonprofit in BC about that capacity for small organizations and how you carry too much and try to do too much when you have so little capacity, time, and effort. So stop with the passive asking. I know your boss is going to want you to make a will kit. I know your boss is going to want you to have an estate planning dog and pony show with a lawyer to tell people why, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you could leave a bequest to us and why you need to make a will. Our legacy data in Willpower, which I'll talk about in a minute, has shown us that Canadians do have wills. You got to stop telling them to make one and you got to let them know why you need to be in it. Your charity, a gift to your mission. We got to engage donors and stop with the passive stuff. And again, for a lot of people, we know we're talking to the same donors in the same areas, the same wealthy people. Look, if you think you're going to get any of that Bill Gates money, you're in the wrong. Fact is that philanthropists, that's not what drives real giving in Canada. In your community, we're talking about local donors. We're talking about people who are investors and partners, more people in small business than in big business. If you keep sleeping on stewardship and engaging those donors and spend more time on events and acquisition, you're only going to bring $1 to $1. And you could be bringing 10 to 1, 100 to 1, 1,000 to 1. Because who is the bigger donor to you? Person whose arm's been twisted at a golf tournament to give you 10 grand? Or a single person who is taking care of their family, who realize that in Canada, you can use 100% of your income tax credits from charitable giving against the income tax on your estate and says, I'm giving you half of everything I own. And they give you 100 grand. Who's giving you more? And frankly, when we crunch the numbers, who does it every day? And who does it outside of urban centers in your local community to charities of your size, and they know you exist? The fact is, we got to start going beyond the usual suspects. You know, a colleague of ours, Michelle Johnson, who is the chair of our Vancouver Island chapter, when we said, you know, what do we need to do in planned giving? And she said right off the bat, we got to stop making it weird. We've got to stop with the fear of death, with the fear of this language. Again, how do you do that? The strategy: create organic lead generation so that they self-identify and you're calling them back. Then all of that worry about being pushy or what they do or don't want to hear is there. And again, to our colleague who put in the chat, who said that we did the gift planning survey. Our donors told us that we don't need to know. Remember, this is a conversation. It's not a one-time thing. Shout out to my colleague who runs a very small children's charity, Rakesh Lakhani. I tweeted the GIF, sorry, I'm a Gen X, this morning to remind ourselves to go beyond the scarcity mindset. You know, in this webinar, if you look it up from 2017, when I did this 4 years ago, when I was with Canada Helps and we had a lot less data, the actual image that we used for the webinar was David versus Goliath. Even we sometimes succumb to that either or mindset. You know, a lot of us in nonprofit have a network, our family, our community networks that are scarcity minded because we are the marginalized. Let me tell you, come over to CAGP and start hanging out with advisors who let you know what the wealthy are up to. Thanks to our colleagues who let us know. Again, read the papers. Globe and Mail talks about how we are in the biggest lumber and renovation shortage in the history of Canada because the money is burning a hole in the pockets of the middle class and wealthy. They're ready to give. We just need to move that heart. No amount of tax dollars is going to convince them. But when you let them know kids are going hungry, there's no point to having a soul if we have no art in our local community, not big provincial galleries. We've got to go beyond that scarcity mindset. Who's doing that well? In a lot of cases, and I know a bunch of you on this call are from our colleagues at churches, mosques, and synagogues. Most charities in Canada and more than half of donations are connected to faith. Faith is that ultimate inspiration for many Canadian donors. It's where they learned generosity. So, you know, again, a great case study on Sophie, the International Museum of Fundraising, about the Community Foundation, the Jewish Foundation of Greater Manitoba, and their incredibly deep book of life, telling the story of their legacy donors. Got to give a shout out to our colleagues at Abundance Canada. This organization, often referred to as the Christian Community Foundation of Canada, has figured out the alchemy of something that has held our community back for our 27 years. Plan gifts, gift plans, plan giving, strategic giving. And while we're debating our own jargon, the donors are literally dying. It is their legacy. It is their love. This team has found the magic word, generosity. Generosity overcomes the law, the plan gifts, the vehicles, the forms, the mailings. It is a conversation about why you're here. You don't need to be a faith-based group to have it, but if you are, you need to double down on that. Again, thanks to those of you in the chat asking about the presentation. Again, my colleague Aaron emailed you. It's in the Dropbox right now. And yes, my 6 pages of links. Don't worry. Every book, every group, every face you see is in the deck, is in the links. And again, people often tell me, Paul, going to your presentations is like drinking from a fire hose. And I remind people, you're not supposed to drink from fire hoses. You're going to die like that. Stop. Chop it up. Again, that's why I broke it up for you in 5-6 pages. Give one set to your boss, give one set to your board, give one set to your volunteers. It's not just about you. And again, I got to give a shout out to truly one of my greatest mentors, and I worked for the Pope for 5 or 6 years, but Lori Gunther Reeser, Canada's most advanced fundraising strategist who blends theology and fundraising strategy. We've been bugging her for this book for half a decade, and it just came out weeks ago. The Strategy of Giving in a Faith-Based Context. I encourage you, if that's your world, to take a look. All right, I told you I was going to be spilling this tea. Stop putting old people's hands on your brochures. That was something that we heard from donors and in focus groups, but now again, we've got the data. Our colleague Penelope Burke unequivocally said, please, and again, I can hear the person who's directing this. I need an old hand and a baby's hand. The baby's hand's not puffy enough and the old hand's not wrinkly enough. Get them both in water. This is not inspiring donors. This is not being the mirror that we need it to be to show them who they are and that people like them do this. This has been the default image for 25 years. Let us together agree it's time to stop. If you want to go deeper in that, what really a lot of marketing communications leaders want to do is unpack the psychology of legacy. And our colleague, Dr. Russell James at Texas Tech University, has done that incredibly with his book, where he put donors in an MRI machine for 6 hours and read brochures to them, which is super cool for fundraisers. But the fact is, our colleagues at Market Smart, and thank you, Greg Warner and the team, who are one of the most advanced North American teams working primarily with hospitals, larger charities, but scrappy organizations that want to push forward past paper into the digital world of gift planning, has gone and taken Dr. James's research, put it online free, and I've given marketing presentation, don't word, that word. But again, we're trying to get into the psychology, and the psychology of legacy is different than the psychology of generosity. That's connected to the part of the brain, this is Dr. James's research, that really fulfills the warm and fuzzy. But the part of the brain tied to legacy, gifts, and wills is the part of the brain tied to autobiography. Here's where we flip the script. Stop talking about your campaign, your golf tournament. Start talking about, why do you give to us? What do we mean to you? Where do we fit in your life story? Because in Canada, we have the largest amount of Canadians with the least amount of kids right now, and more of them are leaving 2, 5, 10, 20, 50, 100% of all the money they got on earth to charity because they want a legacy. That legacy will be with you if you stop doing the math stuff and start doing the hard stuff. We got the data. Thank you to Imagine Canada and the Rideau Hall Foundation. This report's a few years old right now, but thanks to the Moutard Foundation and the Globe and Mail, we asked this question: why do Canadians give every year? And they finally broke it down by data demographics. And as much as we at CAGP, the tax-motivated organization in Canada, would love to tell you, tax is important, it's dead last. Number 1 is caring for those in need. Number 2 is connection to a cause. And yes, if you look down at the bottom, you'll see that Canadians over 75 care a bit more about taxes, but that's because more people over 50 hold their personal wealth in assets, RSPs, houses, portfolios, not cash. And everything we do in fundraising is cash. If you want more money from older donors, gift planning is the way to do it. Get it off the side of your desk. Start talking about giving of assets in everything you do, from annual funds, stocks, to remembering us as part of your life plan and estate plan. We got to get that in the mix. Again, thank you to our colleagues at community foundations who continue to evolve this thinking by talking to Canadians in that community concept and remind us that once, and this was a big pandemic one, am I going to be okay? Are we going to be okay? Is the community going to be okay? Who benefited in the pandemic big time? You know, food banks. And that's because of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's what people could wrap their head around. Common sense, right? But we knew that the fact is that women escaping violence and community and democracy, civic health, economic health has been decimated. And if we're going to build back, we need to blend those dollars. We need to let them know they can give to us from their assets, and they can afford then to give you more. At the very least, if a 20, 30, 40-year-old knows that if they give to you and use the tax receipt, they'll get back about half, and a 50, 60, 70-year-old knows they can give stocks to you and get even more back on their taxes. They can give to you through their RSPs if they plan it with an advisor. They can do that. The big question is not, would you remember us in your will? The big question is, how do you want to be remembered? And what role do we play in that? Again, I want to give you books for your boards and your bosses that are non-math based, and you can start to learn that language. Thank you to talk about how we appeal to people of different ages and stages. Well, this book is written by a Canadian best-selling author who writes on personal finance and retirement, Lindsay Green, out of Victoria, BC. And she truly talks about life legacy and teaches the language of how to do this. Look, Canadians don't just live in urban centers. We're very grateful to colleagues who are starting to help us realize, especially in small charities, people care more about local than ever before. What was our life in the pandemic? Teeny tiny radius. And again, a reminder, all this wealth transfer language is a huge distraction. Just like, yeah, everybody's saying we're going to do one-time inserts and things, one-time anything is never going to break through in marketing. Again, if you want to learn the language of that, our colleague and one of our founders, Ken Ramsey, has written an incredible book called The Empowerment Dialogue that will help you, your boss, and your board to incorporate the language of presenting giving. Again, remember, this is not just about fundraising. We have an obligation. Our donors have come to us because they care about our mission. Many of you in health, family, children, community, this is the DNA of your donor. And if you don't empower them to do more, it's not just that you're leaving money on the table. You're not fulfilling your mission as well as you could. And this book helps us to do it in the least weird way. Now, let's talk about usual suspects. Ooh, hashtag philanthropy so white. If we want new money, and frankly, we are seeing generations of Canadians that are making that money who have been here for multiple generations, we got to understand and we got to start engaging. Remember, this person called us up and said, how do we engage more people to get more Asian money? Well, then you need to employ Asian fundraisers and have Asian board members and engage the Asian community. You just can't translate a brochure. But again, I know we need data to do that. You need something to convince your boss and your board. Imagine Canada and Christian Mehta have done it. Great report, 256 pages on Canadian economic data, actually comparing over time remittances to certain communities versus giving. The giving of different generations, first, second, how many years they've been in Canada. And one of the most interesting things in their report showed that, in fact, newcomers and immigrants give at a higher rate of bequests than what we found in our Willpower Canadian data. And if you want to go deeper, again, our wonderful colleague, Dr. Christian Mehta at Ryerson University, has written some papers on this great podcast with our colleagues at KCI. You're going to get all those links as part of this presentation. But that's what we call usual diversity. The fact is we know that in this country, we've got to go deeper on our reconciliation journey. We're not there. I'm born and raised in Ontario, where our education around reconciliation and the true history of our engagement with Canada's Indigenous peoples is in a criminal deficit. We got to go deeper. And as a charitable sector, we can declare all these things, but what are we going to do about it? Fact is, we've got the resources. Our colleague, Edgar Villanueva from the States, who is engaged in foundations in this, his book, Decolonizing Wealth, is the book to read, with not just the ability to talk about Indigenous reconciliation, but the incredible wisdom of the generations of Indigenous Canadians who have a lot to teach us about a new way of fundraising and philanthropy that is less about all of these things on the top and more of these things on the bottom, which we want. Now, of course, we always do this thing where we tell everybody about Americans. What about Canadians? We got a lot of Canadian talent here. Our colleague Sharon Redsky, who was teaching at our conference, is teaching in some of our chapters. A leader, a Canadian, dyed-in-the-wool AFP fundraiser, has got incredible papers on this through her role in the AFP Diversity Fellowship. And she's out there helping organizations on their reconciliation journey. And again, teaching that deep wisdom that we could learn from to go deeper on. I've given you a link to her incredible paper and the work that she's doing. Our colleagues at The Circle, who are helping Canada to go beyond a charitable sector, go to beyond declarations and start getting into action. I'm excited to share again with CAGP after our last conference. We're going to be going deeper on this. We hope you'll come along. And our colleagues at Canada Helps, who are starting this journey with solidarity funds of not just Indigenous Canadians, but also Black. And today we heard a whole bunch of comments around Asian solidarity and how that fund is going to be matched. Fact is, when everybody's talking about disbursement quotas, we've got the receipts that show you can raise that quota as much as you want. That money was never coming to marginalized communities anyway. We've got the information from the Foundation for Black Communities, rooted in our colleagues in the Calgary Foundation, and a just recently published book, Collecting Courage, the story of several Canadian Black fundraisers and their experiences in with charity. Everybody's talking about diversity in your job postings and the work that we're going to do. Yes, this affects gift planning. Let's take a quick minute here before I finish up with some of the questions. Thank you, our colleagues, for getting those in there. Just asking about exact wording in the will. We'll get to that as part of some of the resources for you today. A donor who wants to talk about gift planning and advice for that first conversation. This comes from a colleague for whom I have a bequest to that kind of institution. Remember, follow them. Listen to their story about why they care, and then match what they're trying to do with the different options. We've got some resources on how to walk them through that conversation. From our colleague in Quebec, are there resources in French? Absolutely. Certainly not as much as we would like to be, but we are working with our different committees in CAGP to have those resources, and all the material that we put out as much as we can is in French as well. You'll get a link to that. And then advice on engaging younger Canadians. Again, part of it is meeting them where they are. And as much as our willpower resources showed that, and again, this is where, we've got a whole new day here. We're transitioning. And let me say it out loud. Leave a Legacy is done. That was a CAGP program that we had trademarked. We've run for 15 plus years. It is retired in 2021. We know it'll take a little while for the words to get out of the zeitgeist, but it is time for Willpower. And the fact is that really we're going to transition this. But again, you've got all these different days. Everybody's talking about cash on Giving Tuesday. No one's thanking their legacy donors. We need to be nominating more legacy donors and these kind of thoughtful, investment-minded donors on things like AFP National Philanthropy Day and through our community corporate programs. Willpower is flipping the script. It is a marketing-led effort to really go deeper into what we know. Number one is what the data tells us. And you're going to get this report that has all this data from the infographic. How many Canadians make wills? Yeah, it's 50%. But how many Canadians above 80 make wills? Guess what? It's closer to 90%. So you don't have to be doing all of these estate planning days with a local lawyer. No, spend that time talking to donors. Put the checkbox in your mail, answer the calls that come in, just like our colleague Deb was talking about. Pick up the phone. We don't need no Zoom. Pick up the phone, as our colleague Eli Clark keeps teaching us, a great fundraiser who is teaching, who's doing sessions on the power of the phone, especially in the pandemic. But the fact is that the people who make the most amount of wills, 35 to 50. But we can't focus on them because we've got to focus on the demographic of 55 to 75, who are the ones who are more likely to get a bequest in and are closer to us realizing that bequest. But go deeper on Willpower, especially as small charities. We've made it very affordable for you, and you become a member of CAGP as a participant. We had billboards off the 401 in our pilot city. We had 18 million impressions. We had thousands of donors taking actions that, guess what, we can track. No more one and done newspaper inserts about legacy that are logo parades for only the biggest charities in your town. Yes, it fulfills your bosses and boards' fantasies of being in the newspaper. What does it do? One and done newspaper inserts, guess who that's making money for? Newspapers. And as much as I love newspapers, journalists, and journalism, that's not gift planning. And you're not raising money, and we can't track those things. Willpower is based in the data, in the tracking, and democratizing and getting all those logos out to let the donor follow their heart. And when more donors follow their heart, it's a more democratized conversation. Yeah, we're talking about cats. We're talking about faith and community, environment, social service, health, all of that in there. A great question here about putting wills and securities. Yes. Again, one of the big things we're doing here is we're taking the gravity and the pressure off you as the small charity and putting it on the person it should really be with, who frankly has the insurance to cover this and is licensed to do it, is on the advisors. If someone's going to be talking about tax, they need to be a CPA. If someone is selling life insurance, they need to be licensed to do so. And if someone is making a will and talking to a donor about the strategy, they should be an estate lawyer. Leave the head to the advisors. You focus on why they're doing it, why they need to do it with you, and why they need to put in their will with you today. Great thanks to our wonderful colleague, Natasha Van Ben out of BC, one of our great evangelists of legacy giving, who shared with us these campaigns. Willpower is part of an international consortium, awesomely named Legovision, around the world, that is now leading this movement to have a public conversation and socially normalize the concept of leaving a gift in your will all around the world. And we're part of it. Come along with us and be part of it too. There's a deadline, May 31st. We want you to be there. Again, take a look. We've given you the link on the website. We've got a major sliding scale to make it affordable for you as a small charity. As I finish up, I want to tell you, we teach at CAGP, but we're not the only game in town. Our ethos is wherever philanthropy is, wherever generosity is, we want to be there too. And we're grateful to to all of our partners across this country where we go, and very often myself and our faculty teach. Is it the Western Canada Fundraising Conference in Kelowna next year, the Build Good Summit in Winnipeg? Is it the CPA Nonprofit Forum, where we can evangelize your finance staff to help you raise money? Yeah. Kathy Arney, our colleague with CPA, and Betty Ferreira as well, who are teaching finance leadership for charity staff. We teach the fundraising, but they're teaching the financial elements of the administration and the law. And again, we're proud to be part of the Association of Fundraising Professionals What Donors Want survey this year and study to go deeper. I'm going to give you a bunch of this stuff in podcast links. Come along with us if you want to go deeper, but otherwise, get back to work. Put the check boxes on there, answer your donors' calls, have conversations about legacy. But if you want to go deeper, we've got a roadmap for you on how to do that. We've got a few courses coming up in the next number of months. Our fundamentals, our one-day course, our conversations course, training you how to talk to donors, and of course, our next year's schedule of webinars. And lastly, most people don't even know, we have a small charity membership in CAGP. It's only $150. It's cheaper than a lot of resources that are out there. It's $325 for most charities, $375 for advisors. It's $150 for you. You get our $150 textbook, Plan Giving for Canadians. You get discounts on cutting edge new data like the Donor Advised Fund Report, like our colleagues at the Avatar Consulting, who have a new piece of software for small organizations for bequest administration and gift planning audits. Our groundbreaking service, Ask an Advisor, where we have an advisor on retainer to answer your questions about gift planning. And when you're having a question, just like our colleague Deb, who said, I got a call with a donor this afternoon, you can ask an advisor. We can help you get that advice. And take a look. We got a gigantic grid of like $2,000 of savings. That's what we do. And remember, we're all across the country. We're near where you are. We have 20 chapters in every province of this country. We have local experts. I'm our head of faculty to curate and support our courses, but we have got dozens of faculty, hundreds of gift planning experts in every corner of this country that know about your context and your donors way better than we do. So please engage them, reach out to your local chapter. As we finish up, we went through an exciting exercise at our conference, and we asked our members, our community, what does gift planning mean to you? In the past, we would have got a lot back about numbers, about money. This time around, thanks to our colleague, the wonderful sketch note, Mandy J, we got meaning. If you're going to get a copy of this, take a look and see what this means to you in the conversation that we're having now in philanthropy and generosity in Canada. Come along with us if we can help. Contact us if we can help. Connect with our local leaders. And before we finish up, let's have some Q&A. But again, don't worry. I got it all for you here. All of those resources in the space. And our foundation is always here to help if you need some in-house training. So let's take a look if there's any questions I may have missed. Aaron, if you want to pop any of those up. And quite a couple of questions about very specific situations about will wording for donors, etc. Again, this is probably not the best place for that kind of information. Let's follow up offline. And again, connect you to a local expert, a local advisor who can help you with that kind of material, because we got like thousands of these kind of advisors. And again, now several dozen MFAPs across the country. Wonderful set of questions. How do we find advisors, and specifically master financial advisors in philanthropy across the country? We list those publicly on our website. We're going to actually start breaking them down by geography and sharing it with our local groups so that we can lift them up. But again, you're going to see me in your town in 2022, God willing. I'm going to vaccinate my eyeballs to get there. But to host these events with United Ways, community foundations, hub networks, to gather the advisors and teach them how to support you. That's going to be our big focus for the next year. And then we're going to capture all those names and make sure you know who's charity friendly, because that's an important thing. Wonderful. Great stuff. I think we've covered quite a number of them. Again, we're going to share a copy of this. Yes, the recording. This is our big free one. It's going to be public online. Feel free to follow up with us. You can find me on LinkedIn, which is my actual place of residence, not this terrible box in front of the world's largest pile of laundry that you can't see. Just know we're here to help. And what you do is important. Left to our own devices, all the money will go to bigger organizations. I wrote this post, and again, in the spirit of my colleague, Adam Grant, about thinking again. I once wrote this big article said, we don't need more charities in Canada. I was wrong. Your community needs you to represent local issues, to represent the marginalized, to represent the underserved, to represent the undersupported. We need you to grow that capacity, to bring those donors in who care, who can and want to give you more. People are literally dying to give you their money. I know I'm excited for the bequests I'm going to leave, and now I'm engaged with those charities to do more in life. I've doubled my personal donations because those charities steward and engage me. We hope that you can do that with your donors. We hope this is of value today. Thank you for joining us here at CAGP for this webinar. We'll hope you come back for more education and connect into the network that we've curated over these past 27 years. Thank you everyone for joining us. Again, your CFRE, your MFAP credits, a copy of this is all in the Dropbox. Please fill out the survey that we've just put in the chat. It helps us to engage in better education, and especially again to serve you as smaller organizations. It is a big part of our mission. We want that democratization of Canadian generosity. Thank you everyone for joining us. Hope to connect with you out there. Continued success in the important work that you do.